סליחה שאני מדבר באנגלית. It says in Mark Sugas, in the Torah Shulchan Aruch, Kabbeis Avicha Vesimecha, learns out from the Vav Yisera, the rabbis Achicha Agadol. And the Kalim say, what's this Achicha Agadol? Gadol ha'achim shenichnas b'makayim ha'av. Not for the children, but for the siblings. When one thinks of a father, he thinks of his father as being the wisest person, the biggest tzaddik, knows everything. They look up to him. That's what Sheldon was for us, his brothers, not to mention the children. He was wise, he was righteous, he knew everything. I remember when we were kids, quite young, every Shabbos, well, I snuck away, made believe I was sleeping, all kinds of hitchakmuyot. Sheldon would learn with Dad. And I remember in my room making believe I was sleeping. I would hear them learning together. I was too young to be jealous. But in retrospect, I'm very jealous. We went once on a cross-country trip with Mom, Oleh Shalom, Jack and Sheldon. And we were on an overnight or a daytime, I don't remember exactly how long. It was a long trip. And in the morning we had to put on tefillin. So of course, I was maybe just bar mitzvah then, I was 13 years old maybe. Embarrassed, afraid of the goyim. What are they going to say? They don't know what tefillin are. Anti-Semites, all kinds of stories that we grew up with in those days. Sheldon, he put on his tefillin in his seat. He explained to the goyim who asked him what it is, how it is, why it is. He didn't call the police like they do nowadays. He was proud, and he knew what to explain. I didn't know anything. Everybody knows that he was very, very knowledgeable in science. But underlying that science, he knew that there's a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and he makes the science work. He had a yarmulke, kippah, in the olden days, a long time ago. An embroidered kippah, on it had Einstein's equation of E equals mc squared. People thought that was strange. I didn't think it was strange. It drew attention not to him and not to Einstein. It drew attention to his kippah. Perhaps people asked him, what is this thing? And I'm sure that he explained to them exactly what it was. He was proud. He's the only one I know who was able to listen to the Daf Yomi while driving to work, and then afterwards explained to me the daf. I don't know how anyone could do that by heart without a Gemara in front of you. But he did it. He was very proud and happy with his daf yomi. By the Siyam Hashas, he was oizazich. He was thrilled, traveling by train to Manhattan to the Siyam Hashas. He saw Yad Hashem in all of science. He even discussed some science stuff with the Baba Rebbe when he went to the Baba Rebbe with our father Zal, because that was when he was studying for his doctorate, and it was dragging on and dragging on and dragging on, and the professor never told him to write up his thesis, and it was going on, and Dad suggested he goes with him to the Rebbe. He went to the Rebbe and he asked him how he's doing, was he studying, what's your thesis going to be about? And Sheldon explained it in a way that the Rebbe was able to understand. He gave him a bracha. The very next day, the professor came over to Sheldon and said, it's time for you to write up your thesis. And he did, and he earned it, and he earned his PhD. He learned Torah in his shul. He taught Torah in his shul. He was proud, very, very proud of the accomplishments, and he enjoyed it immensely. And he knew so much. If I wouldn't have Kinnis Sofrim, I would be embarrassed of myself. He was the foundation of the shul in Silver Spring, from the very beginning, from Rabbi Bernstein, I think, the name. I don't know how many times he was president of the shul. He gave me the push to be president of our shul. He was Shliach Tzibor, Yom Noirayim, even when he was doing dialysis, after heart surgery even. That part I never learned. He picked it up, it was a chush. He picked it up from the shtibel where we grew up. If I'm not mistaken, that's a nusach that he used. And he was wonderful at the Shliach Tzibor. He enjoyed his work. It's very important to enjoy one's work, because then you could be depressed. He enjoyed his work. And he was happy that he's defending his country, but I think he was more happy that he was helping Israel, working on the Arrow project, Arrow missile. And I just found out now, I didn't know, because everybody knows what he would tell me if I would ask him. He was something in the trophy tank project. I heard that every time he did work on that project, he had in mind his nephew, who was in the tank corps in Eretz Yisrael. In fact, he was such a successful scientist that a representative of a certain secretive company questioned me about him. However, regarding what was discussed between me and him, as Sheldon would say, I can tell you, but I'd have to kill you. He was very, very happy with his visits to Eretz Yisrael. Way back when, he would come very, very often as part of those projects. I even remember one time he came just for one day. He had one meeting and he came for one day, in and out, and that was it. They gave our children having him as part of their childhood, those visits. During one of those visits, our daughter Yaeli was in high school. She was studying physics, which is not easy. And Sheldon reviewed the stuff with her. She got a 94 on the exam. So people will say, oh, maybe she's just very bright, which she is, of course. But on the next physics test, when Sheldon wasn't there, she got a 68. Okay. We don't know how much tzedakah he gave, but I do know that for many years, every year he would donate a pair of tefillin to some organization that did kiruv. A pair of tefillin is not $5 or $10. No less important, he was a very, very main supporter of our son Shlomo's kollel. Here in Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim, he has a kollel Motzei Shabbos during the winter season. They learn on Motzei Shabbos. And he was a very, very big supporter, monetarily and supportive. And in fact, this past Shabbos, after Shabbos, we spoke to our son Shlomo, and he told us that he had a feeling that as long as the kollel is learning, Sheldon's going to hang in there. And in fact, this past Shabbos was the last Motzei Shabbos of the Zman, and the last Seder of the last Motzei Shabbos ended at midnight, which was 5 o'clock in America. So afterwards, I was told, big talker, he was nifter at 5:15. So my son tells me, which he didn't know, that when he was nifter. He said he spoke to the Avreichim who were learning. They told him because they're doing renovations and this and that, and they couldn't get in early enough. Is it okay if they learn till 12:15? So of course he said yes. So he learned till 12:15. And that was the schus, that was Sheldon's schus. Bottom line is, as Bobby used to say, she's so proud that all of her children and grandchildren are Shamar Torah mitzvahs, following in Derech HaAvos, Derech HaTorah. I think I can say that Sheldon and Masha outdid this. Of course, their children are Shamar Shabbos Torah mitzvahs, but all of them are steeped in Torah, whether it's learning in Kollel, whether it's teaching Torah, whether it's doing kiruv work. They're all in Torah. Masha, Avi, Nachum, Miri, Leah, all the spouses and children should have the koach to get past this difficult time and to continue in this derech of Torah, Lilmoid, Lelamed, Milchs Hasadim, Tzarchi Tzibur, Tzedakah, Midas Toivos. He should be a Melitz Yosha for the family and for all Klal Yisrael. Bila Mavas Lanetzach Mocha Hashem Elikim Dima Me'al Kol Panim.
I probably should have gone earlier because I pretty much have the same, same points. I mean, what Sheldon meant to all of us here in Eretz Yisrael. I mean, you can see what I have written down here: arrow, trophy, kippah. Just that Marsha's the one who crocheted the kippah. For those who remember, and I'll just add 1 or 2 points on all the things that Chaim said, because from Yidvar B'Yotzim Alev, you can't really add to them. But that Sheldon wear this yarmulke to the biggest conferences and with the biggest physicists. And sometime one of the physicists came over to him, and it was like when Sheldon explained to him, what it means and why he wears it and what this and how he feels it with the, how Hashem's, the whole geschäft. And he said, I really want a yarmulke like that. I really want a yarmulke. But it's not my place to say it, but the obvious thing where Sheldon got this from is the strength to fight for Klal Yisrael is, of course, his parents, and we're thinking of his mother, Leah Shalom, Ms. Rose Meth, for those who know the story, many of you do know the story of the handful of women in Auschwitz who helped sneak out little bits of gunpowder. The attempt to blow up the crematoria, partly successful, she was saved by the courage, by Siyata Dishmaya, and the courage of the other girls who were tortured to death and didn't reveal that she and some other the women were in on it. But the idea is that obviously we grew up in America in a completely different time. It's not the same thing, but we still have enemies, and all the things that Sheldon did throughout the years. Whenever he would come, and then 2 days later we hear about an arrow. Coincidence? Efshenisht. That was. We always knew that there was something going on, but we never realized the depth of it. from his parents. And also about with Columbia. Now, I once said, Sheldon, you were at Columbia, that's the 60s, and into the 70s, but throughout the 60s. And the 60s were pretty much of a turbulent time, to say the least, especially in Columbia. I asked you, did you ever see? He said, once. I think I smelled tear gas once. I mean, it was focused, but he wouldn't stay in the dorm because and he would travel back and forth to huge, an hour, over an hour each way. So he should stay in a firm atmosphere and not the dangerous subway of those days. So he could stay in a firm environment. And I just want to finish a little bit with a few things that. He wasn't just devoted to his work; it's to his family. He was a caring and loving husband, father, grandfather, and son and son-in-law. And as Chaim said, all these busy trips, he would always manage. These tiny little trips. He's doing what he did, which probably we'll never really know all the places he was involved in. But he would always visit Babi Aleh Shalom, and he spent time with us and in Har Nof and in Rehovot. Make sure to that. And speaking of devotion, of course, it goes the other way also. Sheldon received a lot of devoted care from a lot of people throughout a lot of years. Obviously, starting with Alan Sussman, with the kidney, gave him of himself physically, and gave him healthier years. His children and grandchildren supported him, he loved, and made his time on earth really worthwhile. And especially from Marcia, our sister-in-law, and took so much care of him throughout all these years. And they met when they were kids, teenagers, and half a century they were a really inseparable pair. We'll miss you, Sheldon. Klal Yisrael will miss you. You enriched our lives during your lifetime. Maybe the Meli Tziyosha for the entire Mishpacha. Klal Yisrael.
So, as opposed to the first two speakers that spoke, I haven't really known Sheldon Abba for so long. In fact, it's been 3 years and a day. Ms. Leah and I had our first date on March 31st of 2016. But already just in those 3 years, he has already felt like a father to me. That it was like the lost son that he never had. And we weren't even engaged yet. And Leah's sister Miri, she invited me over for a Yontif meal on Pesach. And it was like a little strange. The family, they just welcomed me in. And we went to Duck. It took us 3 tries. We finally made it there. And it's a little overwhelming. And you see the whole family together with the 16 cousins. I can't even name all of them up against the wall. But you see how much they love each other. And I think that really comes from Abba and Mommy, with the family that they're really building together. And you see it. Everybody loves one another. And they take Razel, our daughter, and they make her one of the cousins. And it's really incredible and really good feeling to be around. So when Abba was sick for the past couple weeks, I started speaking with people in yeshiva to get people to daven for him. And they wanted to know, what's your father-in-law like? They were very curious. So what's he do? So I said, I'll tell you the truth, I'm not really sure what he does. But I'll tell you, he goes to work and he says he's a scientist. That's what he says, but that's not that's what he does, but it's not who he is. He's a Ben Torah. And he goes to work and he sees Hashem and all the Torah that he does, and he lives to make every single Kiddush Hashem, that he meets every single person. He's probably the only Orthodox Jew that a lot of people know, and he loves it. He thrives on it. He knows how to give Torah over to people. And before he even gets to work, as Chaim said, he listens to the Daf Yomi in the car. And that's really the highlight of his day. He could go home from there, and I think he would be done. But he doesn't. He goes on, and he does so much all day long. And then people in yeshiva, they ask me, what are his kids like? Because that tells you what a person really is. I say, well, one did kiruv and chinuch, now they're in business, and they're making filters for people to have kosher usage of computers, and another one is a Rosh Kollel in Vegas, and another one is a Rebbe in an out-of-town high school, and then there's us. We're not so important, but you see his kids, and it really shows, and you see his grandchildren, and it can tell a lot about a person, what his passions are, and Torah was it. There was family, and there was Torah, and when he did science, for him, that was also Torah, and it was really those two things, I think. And it wasn't just that he loved Torah, but he really was a Talmid Chacham. He went through Shas almost 4 times, and he loved it. He went to Shabbos Shir for Be'iyun, to learn Gemara Be'iyun, and that was the highlight of his week. I think Nachum was talking about that yesterday in America. And yeah, it really shows, I think, that he's really mechayev everyone, every single business person out in the world, because it shows you what's the potential of what a human being can be. And not just a working person, but I think he's also mechayev a person learning in yeshiva, that you have Seder Aleph, Seder Beis. So Abba had his 9-to-5 job, and look what he was able to do on the side. He just wanted to push, and so I think a pasuk I was thinking about this morning during davening in the second paragraph, or not the second bracha, right before Kriyas Shema, really describes him, is Lilmod Ulalamed, that he learned and he also taught. Not because he was a Rebbe in yeshiva, but because he led by example. You just watch him, and he's just a walking, living Musar Shmuz. Lilmod Ulalamed Lishmor Velasos. He really guarded his mitzvahs, and when he did a mitzvah, he had the Harini Muchan, not because his grandfather was Hasidish, but because he really cared about doing a mitzvah. Asiyas mitzvah was so important for him, and he felt it in his heart. And when he sings Shabbos Miros, he says Shem Hashem, because it's a tefillah. It's not just some sing-song thing at the dinner table, but it's really coming from him, and anybody that knew him saw that. So, Lilmod Ulamed, Lishmor Velasos, Ulakayim es kol divrei sarasecha, he was Mekayim everything, and finishing Shas many, many times. And then Ulakayim es kol divrei sarasecha, and he didn't just do it, but he did it ba'ava, that he did it with love, he did it with passion everywhere he went. And you can see on his face, when he talks about Torah, you walk with him to shul in the wheelchair, he'll tell you over the Ramban on the Parsha. It just turns him on. If you want to know what a person, you look into Shidduchim, you ask what turns the person on, because that's really who he is. So there was a Gemara I saw yesterday. It's in Sota, I think on Tez Zayin Amud Beis, and I think it's also maybe in Menachos, Yevamos, but it really says over in summary what a lot of people in America were saying. Just thought of Abba when I was learning it, so I wanted to tell it over to people here, is that the Gemara says to look at the Tchilas on your tzitzis, and what is that going to do? It reminds you of the Yam, of the sea. And from there, you're going to, with the blue, you're going to look up to the Rakia, to the sky in Shemayim, and from there, you're going to think of the Kisei HaKavod, the holy throne up in Shemayim where Hashem sits. And everyone asked the question, how do we get there so fast? I'm looking at the Tchilas on my tzitzis, and now all of a sudden I'm looking up at the Kisei HaKavod. Doesn't seem to make much sense. So Mefarshim explain that you look at the third paragraph of Kriyas Shema, and it says 2 things you're supposed to do to the tzitzis, or Isa Moso. You're supposed to look at them, see them, have a proper re'iyah at the tzitzis, and you're going to know the mitzvahs. And then it tells you what not to do. It says, V'lo sasuru. Don't look. But wait a minute, you just told me to look. So the word sasuru is the same word that Moshe Rabbeinu used when the Meraglim were going into Eretz Yisrael. The word lasoris ha'aretz, to go look at the land. And if anybody knows the story, what happened, the spies went in and they saw a very superficial view of the world. They saw a very superficial view of Eretz Yisrael, said, these people, they're too big for us, they're going to conquer us, we're never going to be able to live there. And so that's what the Torah is saying, V'lo sasuru. Don't look at the world with a superficial outlook. See the whole picture. See that there's more. When you look at a Gemara Sugya, there's more than just the words inside here. There's the Rashi on this side and the Tosfos on that side, and you have a whole Kovas Mefarshim and all the poskim. And the more you go through Gemara and you learn how to learn like that, then you can live your life as a Ben Torah and you understand that the entire world lives like that. You deal with a person, each person's a sugya, and each situation is different. Nothing's black and white. And I think Abba he lived that every single day with the different types of people that he interacted with and the different situations. He always knew exactly what to say. He didn't even have to think about it. It just came to him. It was natural. It was so clear to him. And everybody was saying he's a very simple person. So I think I haven't figured out pretty good in 3 years. But I think he's simple. But within the simplicity, it's because there's so much depth. And it appears simple to the people that deal with him because it was so clear to him. He didn't have to think. It was in him. There was no thinking about it. It's just who he was. So that's something also I said over to people that were asking about him in yeshiva. So we were looking on the email a while ago, and we saw an email that came from Abba. And it's a quote. So Leah, she likes to send out quotes of the month, quotes of the week. Sometimes it's quotes of the year. But depending on how often we get a quote, how much time. So one that Abba sent to her really strikes me, and I think it also depicts the way that he would live his life. It says, a Jew wakes up in the morning, makes himself a cup of coffee. He puts the bitter coffee in a mug, adds to it the sweet sugar, and adds some cold milk. A cupful of contrasts, hot, cold, bitter, and sweet. Then he says, Ribono Shel Olam, I don't know how my day will be, bitter, sweet, hot, or cold. But one thing I know, it will be, Shakol Nehiyeh Bidbaro, as you say it will be. And that's the way that a Jew is supposed to start their morning. And that's the way that Abba started his morning every day, with coffee or not. He didn't need the coffee. It was inside of him. And that's how he lived. And he knew that Hashem was going to pick for him what's right. And you basically asked him how he was doing, even in the last few moments. And he said, Baruch Hashem, terrible. And he did it with the humor that he has. And just within a funny statement, you could depict it and analyze it. And it went into exactly his personality, his character traits, who he was. And I think the hardest thing for Leah and I is tomorrow when you get on the plane. The last time when we flew into Dallas Airport, we didn't have a phone because we were living in Israel and we didn't have an American telephone. So we called on the phone in international arrivals. Abba was going to come pick us up at the airport. And he said, okay, I'll be there in a few minutes. So we go outside and we see all the gray Priuses coming by. I said, maybe it's that one, maybe it's that one. Never was. So we went back in, called him again. He said, no, I'm really almost there this time. And so we went back outside. Maybe it's that one, maybe it's that one. And we hear a really funny voice behind us that says, or maybe it's that one. And sure enough, it was Abba himself. And he had parked his car and he came in to surprise us. And I think that it's going to be very hard on Wednesday when we land and we walk outside of Dallas and we're going to see a lot of gray Priuses coming by. But unfortunately, Abba isn't going to be one of the people driving that Prius. But I think that if there's any source of nechama in a situation like this, I think that it's being able to be part of such a special family that he's created, because you see a piece of him in each person that has the last name Meth or Kramer or Forgash. And so I just hope that your own children can influence our little Rizal and our next one on the way, and be able to carry out the Torah that Abba has received, and he's able to give over the Masorah to our children, and they can give it on to their children with the same fire and passion that he did on the daily day of his life, just with the love for Hashem and his Torah and his people and his land. And just have it be simple. Have it be who they are, not have to think about it, and be able to give it over to people that don't have that. So, I think that's all there is to be said. We love you, Abba.
הבנים שיבואו לכאן. פרק ט"ז בתהילים. מכתום לדוד שומרי מיל כיחוסי סיבור. אמרת לה דוינוי אדוני אותו יחוסי בר לכו. זו אישים אשר באורץ. אימו ואדירי כל חפצי בו מירגוע עצבו יסום אחר מאו ולעשיך לכם מידום ולסועס שמו יסום על ספוסוי. אדוני ננס חלקי וחויסי אדותו מפגוי רולי. הבולים נופלו לי בנים מינק נחלס שופרו עלוי. הבורכס אדוני אשר יעוצו ניח לי לא יסיסרוני חיליו יסוי. חיביסי אדוני לנגדי סומתי מימיני בלמוי. לכן אסומח לי ביוגל כבוידה בסורי ישכן לו בטח. כי לא יישא זוי בנפשי לישוי לא יפסיתם חסיד חולי רוי שוחס. תוידי יוי רק חיים סביבס מוחסס פונכו. ממויס בימינכו נצח. קדיש. קדיש לבוא. מנהג ירושלים, כל יוצאי חרציו לא ילכו אחר מיתה.
Okay, so go, come out. Wait a minute. לא, יש עוד איזה אישה פתאום שחקן נוסע איתה.
tego cię.
לא תוכל אבל לעלות, יהיה לה כמה. יהיה לה קשה לעלות. יהיה קשה לו לעלות. אולי מקדימה.
באוטו מקדימה?
יהודה. יהודה.
Put your hand to come to the shop.
Where is she?
And get into the car. You got in? You got in? Okay.
הפח נשבור ואנחנו נמלוכנו. ואם לא יעמד אלוהינו עלינו מעשה ידינו כוננו עלינו מעשה ידינו כוננהו. יושב בסייסר עליון בצל השדי סלוינון. אוי מר לאדוני מחסי ומצודו אלוהי יפתח בוי. כי הוא יצילך מפח יקוש מדבר אבויס. בברוסו יוסך לוך ושחת כנוכו לא יסירו מפחד לא יומכנו סלוימו ובבוי פן
Amen. Amen.
יושב בסייסר עליון בצל השדי סלוינון אוי מר לאדוני מחסי ומצודו אלוהי יפתח בוי כי הוא יצילך מפח יקוש מדבר הבוי בברוסו יוסף לוך ושחת כנוכו ושפט כנוך ושפט עמידו לא יסירו מפחד לא יומכנו סלוימו תמצא ולא תשמור בכל דרכך. עליך בעיתון חופן תגלול באבן רגלך. עליך הרופס ותגלול כמולצי וסנים. אותך ואפלתהו הסופים ציוד השיר. יקרואני והנהו עמנוכי בצורך חלצהו ואחזהו. אוי ילך יומי מעשייהו והראהו בישועתי. מאין בו סולנתו ילך ולפני מיעטו עושים ליתן דינה וחשבון. מאין בו סום וסולנתו ילך למקום אפורימו וסוילאו ולפני מיעטו עושים ליתן דינה וחשבון. לפני מלך מלכי המלוכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. והוא רחום יכפר עוון ולא ישחית בו להושיב אפוי ולא יועיר כל החמוסוי. בקול.
אמן.
אמן. Amen. Hey, Shmei, Rabba Mavarach, Elam, Lomei, Olamaya. Amen. Amen.
הבנים יכולים להתקרב. איפה הבנים? לדוד שומרני אל כי חוסי סיבוך אומרת לה אדוני אדוני אותי ועושי בלו לכו לקדושים אשר באורץ אימו ואדירי כל חפציבום ירבו עצבו יסום אחר מורו בלסיך נזכם מידום ובלסל שמו יסום על סחוסוי אדוני מנס חלקי וחויסעת אותו מפגוי רולי אבולים נופלו לי בנינים אף נחלס שופרו אלוהי אבורכס אדוני אשר יאוצוני אף לילוי סיסרוני חיליוי סוי קיביסי אדוני לנגדי סומיתי ממיני בלמוי ולוכן סומך לי בברגל כבודה בסורי שכנו בטח לא יישא זוי בנפשי לא יסיתם חסיד חולי רוי שנוחס נוי דייני אוי רחיים סוי ואסמוכס אספונכו נאמויס בימינכו נצח זלמן בן רבי יצחק אייזיק בשם החברה קדישה, בשם המשפחה, הקרובים, הידידים והמלווים, אנו מבקשים ממך סליחה ומחילה שמחס וחלילה פגענו בכבודך, הן בטהרה, בנשיאת המיטה ובתיקון הקבר, אנא סלח לנו כי אין זו אלא שגגה. החברה קדישה נהגה איתך כמנהגי ירושלים עיר הקודש. תהיינה מליץ יושר עבור משפחתך, קרוביך וידידיך, ועבור כל כלל ישראל בכל תפוצות ישראל. ויתן השם ויבולה המוות לנצח, ומחה השם אלוקים דמעה מעל כל פנים, ובא לציון גואל במהרה בימינו. אמן.
לך בשלום, ושמוע בשלום, ושמות לגיירו לך לקיצר מצרים.
כשנצא מחוץ לחלקה באזור הכביש נעשה 2 שורות גברים לניחום אבלים לאח והבנים. את האישה והבנות מנחמים בלי שורה. לפני השורה. לא חייבים.
Change shoes? What? What am I supposed to protest?
המקום ינחם אתכם בתוך שאר אבלי ציון וירושלים. לסגור את השורה מאחוריהם כדי שלא יעברו אחרים. אמנם מפריע לצלם, אבל מה